from time to time I'm reminded of the story by Ajahn Chah that, he had his ways of teaching the Asians, and then Westerners came. And after a while, he started treating them differently because he realized the difference, the background, right? So he, as Ajahn Jayasara explained in the book, he was like this kind father figure or something like that, because he figured out that they were going too much in the other direction. And so that's the setup. And then, we are living in this strange kind of, not even Buddhist modernism, but Buddhist postmodernism, where we have like a lot of different teachings. And the advantage of that, actually, a lot of disadvantages, but one of the advantages is that you can think about how teachings themselves, in a way, are also conditioned and fabricated. And each teaching has a different direction, which means it also has its own kind of blind spots, in a way. And just my kind of impression is that, and obviously also, which means that some people may be drawn to some teachings not for the right reasons, but for the wrong reasons.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So I'm wondering whether, and also like having read some Hillside Hermitage, also noticed some posts where people were saying, I'm keeping the sense restraint for a long time, and still there's nothing. And even Bantaniga said, I never use this word, but it's more about like being now or something. Like he had to, kind of make this correction. So I'm just wondering in general about that, because when you think about this kind of anxiety and neuroticism, you can be immersed within it, and don't notice it, and from that place keep restraining the senses, but what's actually restraining you is this harshness on yourself, right?
Well, basically, yes. I think we spoke about it yesterday as well a little bit. It's like keeping the precepts needs to be done through that personal responsibility. Like each and every time you restrain your intentions or desires, the mind will come up. Well, with a degree of objection to that. The mind is not happy that you're restraining it. So what do you do then? Do you then just distract yourself from the disturbed mind that now you have to put up with because you said no to your desires? Or do you allow that mind as well and endure that level? See, I often talk about it, but I know, it's general audience. Like if I talk one-on-one with somebody for hours and I can understand more specifically where they're coming from, you can give more accurate, same like with a doctor, you can give a general antibiotic because you did not give him any details about your illness, just describe general symptoms, or he can give you exact thing that you need if he can boil it down to it. So most of this stuff, it's the general audience. So it's kind of tailored for generally, I kind of know where people come from because I was one of such people. And European culture, as different as nationalities are, generally it's not the same. It's not too different. People don't want to practice sense restraint. They don't want to give up things. They want everything on easy terms. Talking about responsibility is unpleasant and fills them with anxiety, which is exactly all of it that they need to do. So yes, somebody, if it's too much, you can tell him in a gentler way, but if it's not, then he has to hear it harder. But the point is, you have to recognize that many people would hear it in this general manner, but still have the same attitude. They wouldn't really understand it. So when I talk about enduring things on the right level, people think, okay, so I just need to mindlessly bear discomfort until the magic of Sotapati happens. I never ever said anything remotely like that. The whole book, that first one, is like this, second one, describes the right level in so many different ways to recognize, okay, it's not like just saying no to everything until you're tightly wound that it's just you're going to burst. No, it's saying no to things you need to say no to. Lust, aversion, distraction, delusion, irritation, choice, things that are based on your choice that you actively maintain and do. Weaknesses that you actively, in full awareness, give into. And now, you don't just mindless, like blindly, just, okay, I'll just say no to this and keep the precepts, and when is it happening? No, the point of keeping the precepts is so that your mind comes up with that feedback that's going to be almost certainly unpleasant initially. and then you don't try to get rid of that.
Mm-hmm.
You can get rid of other stuff if you want. So it's a bit more nuanced than just give the precepts and bury it like a donkey or something, and then everything will fall into place, which just becomes another method, which I always criticize. Like, so even if the right thing people can take in that external method, I just stick to this mindlessly, without recognizing my responsibility, my choice, my influence, and my refusal to bear the state of mind on that subtler level where the doubt is, where anxiety is. As I was saying this morning, you don't need great pains and great torment to bring these things up. Just say no to the sensual desires that you want, acting out of anger, and stay with what's left. Not too much, not too little. It's going to come up on its own. And that's the training. And that's the upholding of the virtue. Not just sort of technically learning all the allowables and non-allowables and then revolving around that to protect you magically from these mental states. No, they're supposed to come up if the virtue is done rightly. So if you think your virtue is great and you're keeping the precepts and you're perfectly restrained and the mind is not coming up with anything, with no irrational attacks and thoughts and doubts, you're either fully enlightened or you're doing it wrong. They can be, oh, but I'm doing it right, and my mind is just not doing any of this. It will be coming up with stuff because you are confining it, which is the precursor to taming it.
Right, because...
And that's the thing, see, whether it's a fatherly figure and pat on the back or a stern advice, you have to do the same work. There is no way around that. Sure, you can present it differently to different people, depending on the experience of the teacher and how many people you dealt with, but more likely than not today, for whoever wants to do it, it will be unpleasant to begin with. Because on average, you won't find a person that's thoroughly established in self-control, that hasn't been controlled by their own desires for years, that hasn't been giving into it mindlessly, because he was never told not to. So it will take time to undo that habit, that addiction, and that can't possibly be... It doesn't mean it will be terribly unpleasant. It depends on the person and the strength of their underlying tendencies, but it's the same. It's the same work. Yeah. And often when I hear people say, like, it would be helpful that, such advice is put in such manner, it's like, you don't know that. It's just a preference. It would be maybe less painful to hear it that way, but it doesn't mean it would be helpful for you. Because if you're already concerned about whether this will be painful for me to hear it or not, you're going to be even more concerned when that pain actually comes on account of sense restraint and stuff. So, yeah.
Because I'm not sure I understand the difference from what, after Amiran's question, I think you even started with somebody holding the precepts kind of with brute force and
blindly,
waiting for some magic to happen.
Yeah.
And now you are saying that if you start doing it, there will be some unpleasantness. So it sounds a bit like there will be some unpleasantness, but then...
What do you do?
But at some point there will be no unpleasantness? Or
yes, sure. Eventually. If there is no more pull towards things you said no to, there will be no discomfort. Like if you don't want to go to... Well, you don't want to go to Slovenia now. You don't want to go to Slovenia. And I tell you, you can't go to Slovenia today. Would you be upset because you don't even want to go there? You wouldn't care less. You'd be like, well, fine. But if you really want to go to Slovenia, I say, no, you can't go. Then you're going to feel that.
But because it sounds kind of like you hold the precepts and wait for magic to happen.
Well, no, that's my... See, the magic is the pain. So if you take magic to be the pain, sure, go for that magic. But that's not the magic, isn't it? Magic is, I hold the precepts, so this will stop coming up magically. No, I hold the precepts, and this comes up, and I don't complain about it. And I don't give into it. And I don't try to get rid of it. I allow it to be there so that I can train in regard to it. Because if I want to deal with it immediately, I'm just acting out of aversion towards pain, which is one of the roots of suffering, craving against discomfort. So yes, you need to know the precepts. Yes, they're the technical aspects of it.
So, if I may, so the difference would be, instead of just kind of forcefully holding to precepts and waiting for magic to happen, it's kind of starting to be at comfort with discomfort.
Well, let's see, like even that, the way you present it is so that you won't feel discomfort. Oh, I need to learn how to be comfortable with discomfort so that I don't feel discomfort. And that intention, it's already rooted in, I refuse to accept confinement of discomfort. So I will do anything I can to get rid of it. So it's more about what you won't do. Let's put it that way. You keep the precepts. The pain comes up. The mind is rejecting the idea of precepts. And you don't know what to do. You're full of doubt. You're full of anxiety. You're full of pressure. I told you that meditation techniques are management. They will probably take you further away in the wrong view. So you don't do that. You don't. So what do I do? And it's an absolute despair, panic, confinement. But you still know what not to do. You don't break the precepts. You don't lose the sense restraint. That's what you do. That's why when they ask the Buddha, how did you? The Buddha says, if you swim too hard crossing the river, you tire yourself against the waves and you sink. If you swim too feebly, the waves, the current just sweeps you away. If you try and stand still, you sink. So what did Master Gautama do then to cross the river? He says, well, I didn't swim too hard, nor did I swim backwards, nor did I stay still. He didn't say, oh, I did this fourth thing in between. No, I did not doing of these certain things, and that was his practice. And that's a lot subtler and a lot harder to accept, because see, now you have to live with that doubt, which is like it's quite an unpleasant hindrance, probably more than others as well, because it comes from your core. Yeah, and that's why, again, like when it comes to these meditation techniques or methods or just the whole attitude to have something more clearly, just tell me what to do that I can stick to. That's why, because this is way too uncomfortable. But as I was describing this morning, ask yourself, hold on, but why is this, which is factually not the most painful thing, there are lots more painful thing you can imagine going through, but why is this the worst one? Why is this that nobody wants to do? Like, it would be easier if you just hit me with a rod 100 times than having to spend a week in a solitary confinement with a mind infected with doubt. That's like, I'll go mad. So the hardest is just to live with yourself, while everything else, factually harder, it's not as bad. And that should certainly be a good reason and incentive to reflect on this, because it doesn't add up, doesn't it? Seemingly, you are your own man in control of your choices and everything else, yet being with yourself is the worst thing. The mind resists it the most. And I mean, people did loads of far worse stuff and self-torment, and even the suttas describe it, just to not have to endure it on this mental level. So instead of having this mind of doubt nagging me for 5 days, I can't sleep at night, I'll go and I'll walk 300 kilometers and live only on water and show my great resolve and determination and literally bring yourself to the brink of death. That's easier than just staying with this mind and not trying to get rid of it. But not breaking the precepts on account of it either.
Isn't the worst punishment in prison?
Yeah.
Solitary confinement.
Yeah, that's what I was giving an example in the morning. You can have people that just, all they know in their life is pain. And they enjoy it, basically. There's nothing can scare them, you put them in a solitary confinement, and within a week they cry like little children. They can't handle it. It's just too much mentally. Their own thoughts. That's because the animal, the mind, has been allowed to run wild for so long. And now when you're left with it, well, you become aware that you were the victim of it.
You have no distractions, no one to get angry at, right? But yourself.
Yeah, all of those outlets would exactly be that, just taking it away from where you, deep down, you know where the problem is. That's why I said everybody deep down wants peace. Even people that say, no, I enjoy busy life and sensuality and everything, is because for them, through their view, that's where the peace will be implied, at least, or come from at the end of it. That's the fundamental offer of sensuality: satisfaction, contentment, peace. Every single time. And then you realize, hold on, but if I need to keep renewing this, that's not peaceful. That's more of a trap. So, like, to give you another practical example in terms of the precept, say you take a precept to not eat afternoon. It's like, I won't eat past 12. It doesn't actually say 12. It just says noon. When was the noon? Well, when the sun is the highest. Which could be, half an hour this way, half an hour that way. But today we have clocks, so let's say 12. We can do 12. And then you couldn't eat in time. And then it was 12:15. And now, do you eat or not? What would you do?
I would eat.
You would eat. And then?
And then I would try next day to be on time.
To be on time. But what if you fail next day? Does that mean you're not keeping that precept anymore? Because you ate 15 minutes late?
I think if it becomes a habit, then yes.
But 12:15 becomes a habit of 12:15. Why is that a problem? Why the 15 minutes on the clock?
I would say then I'm a person who eats 15 minutes after noon.
After the noon. But the noon was never directly astronomically specified.
Yes. But more or less, roughly.
Yeah, but why is that a problem? That's my question.
Like I'm not sure if it's a problem. It depends on why I wanted to do this in the.
Well, exactly. So you want, if you start doing it rightly, these technicalities, so to speak, will stay just that. And if you eat, and see, one day you can eat at 11:45 and be within your precept and do it for completely unwholesome reasons. Because the criteria for precepts, if they're done rightly, is on the internal side every single time. It's not on 12 o'clock and ding dong, you can have it now, or you can't. It's, why am I doing this? Am I eating for the right reasons? Oh, I keep the precepts. I always eat before 12. Therefore, I don't have to think why I eat. That goes back onto that mindless keeping the precept of, oh, well, my duty is fulfilled. No, your duty starts with the precepts. Your practice begins, if obviously you look in the right direction. So if you then say one day you eat at 12:30, and then you start feeling guilty and remorseful and feel like you broke all the precepts because you broke the letter of the rule for 15 minutes. What do you do then? What would you do then? Say, I'll give you an example that happens to you and you have this mind of doubt now and feel unpleasant and guilty because you ate and you were not clear why you ate. You were careless.
Like my approach would be to investigate why was I trying to do this in the first place.
Which one? Eating.
Yes, the eating.
But it already happened. It doesn't really matter now, isn't it? It happened. You ate.
Like,
you were remorseful.
If I know what is the goal with it, I may be wrong with being remorseful.
Well, see, that's the point. The remorse is there, whether it's right or wrong doesn't matter.
But it will go away. And if I understand what is going on, maybe it just won't appear in the future.
Exactly. So you want to prevent remorse from arising. You want to prevent guilt from arising because you don't want to have it there. And that's the problem. It wasn't the guilt to begin with. That's why I talk about psychologizations where people, I investigate why all of that, or I'll focus and I'll do this and I'll never, just so that this never comes up again because it's unpleasant. And that's actually what you need to investigate. Why? By default, I lean with my entire being against discomfort, against the mental pain.
In this way, you could do anything against the precepts, for example.
No, you can't. Because you start with the precepts. You start with knowing what you shouldn't be doing. But see, that's why I gave you the example. And that's exactly what the one, oh, so I can go and kill them. You can't. You know that. But if the precept says, finish eating by noon, and noon is not specified, and you feel guilty on account of non-specificity because your mind is infected with doubt, and instead of allowing that doubt to fully arise even if it threatens to overwhelm you, you want to cut it up and create more precepts and more rules and more modes of behavior so that this doesn't come up. In other words, so that the practice doesn't come up, because that's where the practice is. And that's exactly why the mind would want to throw you the other way completely. Oh, look, 50 minutes late. You might as well go and get a wife. It's all the same, isn't it? That's what I mean. It will be throwing irrational things at you to get you to stop keeping the precepts.
So what is the practice then?
The practice then is to learn the precepts and keep them. But when anything within the precepts, when an unwholesome hindrance comes up, do not start to aim at the more precepts and more of this and finding why did this happen 3 days ago, but instead recognize that there and then discomfort that came up is the result of rightly keeping the precepts. And don't try to get rid of it. Don't try to distract yourself from it. That's the enduring on the right level. You can live in the utmost comfort if you want. But this is the level I talk about that things should be endured at. The tapas that the Buddha talks about, the purification. It's not like through water washing and whatnot. It's having these mental states there and become familiar with them without immediately panicking and trying to resolve them. Because doubt, why is doubt a problem? There are loads of things that you don't know, loads of things you're doubtful, but only sometimes it's a problem. Only sometimes comes with that pressure that you want to resolve it, get rid of it, or whatever, manage it away. Why is that? It's obviously not because what you don't know, because as I said, there are millions of other things you don't know. It's because at that time, for whatever reason, it's felt painfully. So although it presents itself like, oh, I'm doubtful about this, if I find more information and reasons why, if I include more data about this, I will resolve it. But it was never about the data or the lack of it. It was about doing anything and everything to remove the pain. And once you recognize that content of the doubt is irrelevant, it's the attitude towards the discomfort of it, that's what matters. You stop resisting it, and then you stop following the doubt. And that's how you go beyond it. Sotapanna goes beyond doubt, not because he learned everything about everything in this world. It's because his mind seen through it and cannot be moved by the presence of the discomfort of the doubt. Cannot make him act like he did before.
And the doubt appears in Sotapanna? Or
It would, in regard to things, in regard to lack of knowledge, in regard to lack of clarity.
doesn't act out of it, yes.
It won't be causing, it won't be coming out of that pressure. See, because as I said, it tricks you. It wants you to act out, to get information, to resolve, to make sure this is never done again, and all of those kind of grandiose outpours, only because you don't want the pain of it. Yes, Sotapanna cannot resist the discomfort of it. That's what he has trained his mind to do. And thus there will be no pain that comes as a result of that resistance. And then you have no problem if it comes up 100 more times. Nor will your confidence diminish, because you know it's always just going to be the same thing. But if you're aiming at removing the content of the doubt, you are doing so with the implication of hopefully it will never come back again. I resolved it finally once and for all. And then 5 minutes later again and again. And it's like an irrational loop. Because as I said, you're addressing it where it isn't the problem. So you're closer to address the doubt for good by allowing it to arise, not acting out of it on that mental level, than to like learn everything that wants to direct you towards. And that's why you did have people in the suttas that fully purified their mind on account of mere faith in the basic instruction that the Buddha gave. There was no moving parts, no 150 suttas and information. It was just anything mentally unwholesome. Don't cultivate it, don't give into it, don't try to get rid of it. And if stuff is not unwholesome, leave it, no problem, but don't lose the sight of it. And that was enough for them to do all the work where it matters.
But you still resolve to do differently. Like not, so it's not the fear of of remorse for the next day, going with the example of Vikalabhojana, right? So today,
But why would you resolve to do differently if it's not really against the precepts or if it's not that clear? So it's like it doesn't make a difference whether it's 12 or 12:15 factually, because it's not specified. Yet it's easier if it's 12, isn't it?
Much.
Yeah. So, but it doesn't make a difference. So why do you feel like you're not keeping the precepts if you eat at 12:15?
Because
but
if
you
I
feel
felt bad today, I don't want to feel bad tomorrow.
Yeah, but see that type of pain.
I know.
If you don't want it, you don't want the right level where the practice is. So if you try to prevent, I will do this so that this doesn't come up. What you're saying is, I'll do random external things so that I don't have to deal with my mind. I'll pacify it. I'll prevent it from going there and so on. You already did that. By taking on the precepts, you have created a boundary that's quite clear. Killing, stealing, cheating, lying, if you take the 8 precepts, eating at the wrong time, and all of that. But these are like 15 minutes. They didn't have clocks. They didn't have time. Monks used to go Pindapat at night and eat multiple times a day. It was not a problem.
Buddha said not to, right?
Yeah, but not because it was relevant for the Dhamma. It's because they were falling in,
people.
again, a circumstantial thing. The Buddha also did say to the monks on his deathbed, you can abandon all the circumstantial rules. I allow you to.
Fault wouldn't be in that 15 minutes break, but in giving into that pain of
That's what
doubt.
I'm not so sure I'm grasping.
Well, yeah, because if you start grasping it, you probably won't need my talks anymore.
Okay, that I heard.
Yeah, and that's the point. And you will start grasping it not by, well, you should try and attempt and understand it, but you have to start doing it. You have to start allowing that particular level where the doubt is, where the little anxieties are, to arise, and not to feel fully justified in, okay, where's my Dhamma to deal with this?
So
there is no management
give
when
an
it comes
example,
to
a different one, also from precepts. You said for you it was very easy to quit alcohol. For me, it wasn't. So when I came to Poland with 8 precepts and my family, it was COVID time, and my family was drinking a lot to ease the pain or the boredom or the anxiety of COVID and lockdowns. And I'm not saying they're alcoholics, but they were drinking. And so because I used to drink normally, when I was under precepts, I could completely see the anxiety and how people were getting drunk, and they were asking me more personal questions, and they were getting braver with their attitude towards me. And I was also getting stronger, but I had panic, but I also had joy. As emotions, as far as emotions go. So I did. So let's say I didn't have a drink. So I didn't have the late meal to be remorseful of. But I had a lot of joy, even though it was painful, even though it was, not easy to get used to be around people that do drink without me drinking. So is there anything wrong with the joy as well? So I resolve not to drink further on because it brings me.
There's nothing wrong with it.
Because it feels good.
Yeah, of course.
Even though it feels not so good in the beginning.
There's no problem with the joy, but I'm pretty sure you're going to have other precepts or other examples where non-joy will come up, with hindrances will come up.
No.
So that's where you look. You don't have to, joy is bad. Not at all.
So
but
if I eat on time and it brings me joy.
Well, again, that wasn't the question I started with. I started, what if you don't eat at the time? Will that bring you sadness?
I know, yes.
If it brings you joy when you eat on time, great.
Okay.
But if it brings you sadness if you don't eat on time, well, is that also great?
Would it be worse than to skip the meal and feel hungry?
You tell me. Why would you skip the meal?
I would skip it.
Why?
Because that's just how my mind works.
So you don't feel remorseful on something that wasn't even defined?
I feel hunger and I deal with it and I...
No, all that's second now.
So,
you'll be dealing with anger and all this because you don't want to deal with remorse that you know is
I
irrational.
understand.
But see, it's irrational remorse. You should be remorseful if there is no question about alcohol you can't drink. And then you drink it. And then you're remorseful. Yeah. And it is a problem. And don't drink it again. That's what I said. You already know the precepts. But the whole point of the precepts is when it comes to this actual training, you have stuff that you just give up. Alcohol, cheating, lying, killing. Yeah. But speech precepts that have all those modifications, the 4 types, and eating and sleeping, that's not like, it's not immoral.
Okay.
Now that's where the precepts change into the training.
Yeah.
So see, you would be not training, but refusing the irrational remorse on account of something that you know it's not the precepts. It's against what I decided 12 o'clock, but it's not against the precepts. Because see, it's easier when you build up a determination and have it set on paper, or have the tradition or environment force it on you. Then I don't have to feel this doubt, the ambiguity, the pressure every single time these desires come up. And that means you won't be training. That's silabbataparamasa. The first fetter is the fetter. It's like people often translate that. Let me just finish this. People often translate that saying silabbataparamasa, it's believing in rites and ritual. No, it's sila, the same word. Bata, duty. Paramasa, fettering you. Sense of duty to keep this sila in that external manner. That's what's preventing you from practicing rightly.
Dhamma and Vinaya was always taught together, not separate.
There was no separate thing. And that's why, like, it's the first stage of enlightenment is the person is referred to established in virtue, i.e., the precepts became this training, became this mental level that I'm talking about, where now you know that's where the Dhamma is, and that's why you don't need any more input or any other guidance. You know exactly where it is, and you know exactly what needs to be purified. Whether you choose to do it or not, that's a different matter, but it becomes clear.
Yeah.
And then you can't hold the precepts in this external manner, even if you want to. What were you going to say?
I wanted to refer to this joy. She talked about, isn't it possible that the joy became being like proud, like I'm better than the most
exactly. You have to see what it is. It's not going to be, it's always going to be like this type of joy. It can be a genuine joy. Oh, I'm so glad I don't have to deal with all these emotional ups and downs because I don't drink. Or it can be, yeah, I'm better than all of these. I've seen both in people. I've seen both. Like, I'm so pure, I'm better than all of you because all of these little things that I do.
This is so tricky because sometimes you're just content with your behavior and just like feeling matters further, you become being like proud.
Well, see, that's not the problem though. As we spoke this morning, with you and you, yeah. The mind will come up. The mind will overstep. But you don't go back to drinking or you don't act out of it. You can't stop the mind thinking its own.
Act out of being proud.
Exactly. So you don't act out of it. That's my point. You don't drink and then you start being proud and then you're like, okay, that's now the level created by my restraint and I shouldn't be acting out of that now. I should not lose the sight of it and start acting and saying things and doing things that come from this place.
Yeah, but for me it's easier to prevent acting, but it's harder to prevent the emotions and opinions. And
you can't prevent that. That's the whole point. Acting is within your choice. That's the gate you open for a wild dog.
So
Emotions.
I'm not responsible about these things that.
You are responsible by not taming the dog. You're not responsible for what dog thinks at the time, but people will blame you because it's your dog. So you are responsible by proxy. But people say, I'm responsible means what? I need to kill the dog so he stops thinking these things. Well, no, you're still going to be responsible for killing the dog then.
And I shouldn't be upset about the dog's thoughts?
It depends. What are the thoughts? But see, you're not upset about the dog's thoughts. You're upset that the dog's thoughts are bothering you and you don't want that. So you're trying to prevent them from coming up. That's not the responsibility of yours. Your responsibility is to not try to deny them or give in to them. Because, as I said, you want to tame the dog, not kill it or let it loose. Strangle it so it doesn't think anymore or let it go away.
Change the dog and the dog doesn't want to.
Exactly. So you need to learn how to communicate with it. And that's this whole approach of recognizing where you do have a say and then not irrationally resisting the discomfort of emotions, doubt, opinions that come from the dog. They want to push you to start acting where you do have a say. That's that right level that's going to be uncomfortable.
they push me to feel guilty, not even act, but
There you
feel
go.
guilty.
Now the guilt is something you have to endure until it's there on that mental level. But you still know what not to do. I don't know what to do. It's too much. But I know what not to do. And that remains. So you just stay there. But it would be nice if it's clearer what I'm supposed to do, and if it's more defined, and if this dog just shuts up. It would be great. And it will be great if you stay with knowing what not to do, not with overshooting the mark, overstepping, and overbeating the dog, or letting it run loose and trying to interfere with that. That's why in the suttas it's a gradual training. But it is taming of the elephant, like many suttas talk about it. And the quite graphic descriptions of the king sends his men and they catch a wild bull elephant, the biggest one. And then they drag it and they put big stakes in the ground and tie it completely, confined. And then it just rages mad and urinates, defecates, tries to kill everything that comes near it. And they just stand there, making their presence known. Obviously, they can't come close because it will kill them. But they can't let it loose because, well, it will kill them. But like they can't just leave it because it will die either. So they have to train it. But the beginning is confining it. So the mind will kick and scream because you put boundaries on it. That's what I say. Like if you were, as I said, you're bound with a dog, you're tied with this dog. And he wants to go left and you go left. He wants to go right and you go right. And he feels like it's fine because you haven't tried to stop it. So you run with it. And then you don't feel the tension that it's pulling you because, okay, it's all fine. But the time will come when you won't run, you can't run. And then you're going to feel the whole pull and the pain. And all the training, inadvertently, you trained it to run even faster and stronger and quicker. It's going to hurt even more because you made it even wilder to not recognizing that indirect responsibility for the dog. Yes, I wish my dog doesn't bite you. And I didn't make it bite you. But I did not train it. And it is mine, and I can't say it's not mine. So it's my fault that it bit you. Just in this case, you're the one being bitten as well. So that's how it works.
What about the Sotapanna? Can he break any precept?
Yes. Yeah, he can break all of them. He can't kill his mother, kill his father, wound the Buddha, kill an Arahant, violate the Bhikkhuni. He can't take any determination activity as permanent. He can't take any determination as pleasurable, and he can't regard anything as his atta, as his self. Those are the 8 things he can't do.
And what would be, because before you said about that doubt might be a reason to act, major reason. So what would be the Sotapanna's motivation, the reason to act on while breaking the precept?
Oh, well, being content with knowing the way out, fully understanding the escape, not suffering to that great degree.
Yeah, so he becomes a Sotapanna at a certain point by confining and...
Yeah, by understanding what I said, understanding the right level and understanding then where the suffering comes from. Because it doesn't come from the external circumstances. It doesn't come from external pain or discomfort or things that you don't want. It comes from that mind turning against you. Because of this or because of that. That's why sometimes one thing, same thing, doesn't make you suffer. On another occasion, you suffer a lot. Same thing.
So would there be like a difference in the pull of this animal for the Sotapanna and for the Putujana?
Well, yes, but see, a Putujana cannot see that difference unless he becomes a Sotapanna.
Yeah.
That's the only way to find it.
The pull is still there.
Well, no, for if you were to compare externally, put the Putujana and Sotapanna next to each other, you can say, yes, there is a difference. But that's not how it works. All you have is your individual point of view. So the pull that you have at the time is the pull.
Yeah.
And if you replace that pull with Sotapanna's pull,
Yeah.
you won't have Putujana's pull anymore. But you can't know the Sotapanna's pull until you become one.
Yeah, of course.
So there is no external comparison. That's exactly why that conceit disappears in somebody who recognizes this level of the mind and starts practicing there. They would have said, he didn't say, oh, he abstains from being proud. He said he becomes unable to think, I am better, I am worse, or I am equal. Any sense of external comparison diminishes.
So from the hindrances, this is only doubt that would be absent.
No. The doubt is a fetter, is absent from his mind.
But doubt is
5
a hindrance,
hindrances are still there, for as long as he's not an arahant. You know, they will be weakened and weakened and weakened, but they will still arise.
So I'm curious, you know, when we talk about the magic of pain and that it's unpleasant, so what did Buddha mean when he said about these like 4 different paths, and 2 of them are actually the path to awakening is short and pleasant, or long and pleasant?
Long and pleasant, short and painful, and long and painful. When he meant what I'm describing now, as I said, for somebody it will feel like dying. Being confined within these mental states will be the worst thing. For somebody it won't, because their habits were not as strong, their craving was not as strong, they already made the effort in other ways. But you can't decide that. You only know that in hindsight. Once you complete the work, you can tell what way were you. It's not like, oh, I am this type before you even completed the work.
But restraint is never pleasant, so how come it's pleasant?
It is pleasant. It can be pleasant.
Point.
It's not pleasant, as I said, because most of us today,
right.
That's our baseline, was sensuality through and through. But say there is a beautiful drink, the best tasting drink in the world, and you're about to drink it, and then somebody tells you it has a poison from the blowfish and you will die within half an hour if you drink it, and you restrain yourself from drinking it. Still the same smell, still the same taste, still the same consistency, but the knowledge now makes you restrain from it. You'll be the happiest man in the world. You'll say, wow, I dodged a bullet. I was about to drink this, and restrained make this mind feel so happy now because it saved my life. Same restraint, paired with knowledge. Because the things you're restraining against, by the way, are factually unpleasant. But you can't see that because you're intoxicated with them. So you need to restrain until the intoxication subsides, and the embers, exactly. And then it's like, oh no, that was always painful, even when I enjoyed it.
So that's the difficult part for me, because the mindset when I start with this teaching is to kind of prepare myself for pain, which I guess is a hindrance in itself, but it's unavoidable, right?
Yeah.
And then when something pleasant occurs, so when wholesome qualities occur, it's like, what do I do with that? And I often notice, not often, it doesn't happen that often, but it feels like there's kind of like a new approach then it's needed, right? Because also there are these 4 efforts, and I also need to know how to maintain wholesome qualities, which is quite pleasant, right? But in a different way. It's like this non-sensual way. And I remember only once you mentioned that, well, actually, yes, so some people can go to this memory of jhana and use it as a shortcut and go there, as a like kind of positive path in a way, sometimes, for someone who knows that, right? And I'm just wondering why this asymmetry, why
I'm not quite sure I said it that way though. I
was surprised as well.
Yeah, I don't. Maybe came across wrong, but no, I think that I was thinking to what the Buddha did. He went to the memory of jhana and then followed the practice that way, because he tried everything else. That didn't work. But most people there would be no memory of jhana for as long as there is sensuality as the baseline. As simple as that. So memory of jhana for most people is just a memory of slightly more loftier sensual experience.
So that would mean that the only wholesome quality that we actively kind of maintain is the mindfulness of the danger, so to say.
And things you don't do.
Right, but still there are these four efforts.
Yeah,
so I'm just wondering
the right effort to not fight the waves, to not push backwards, and to not stand still. See, they're all negative types of effort.
But isn't it the case that actually wholesome qualities, even when there is just like a spark of them, so like Buddhadasa was talking, for example, about these wholesome qualities which occur just in like small amounts.
What are those qualities?
Sorry?
What is? Give an example.
Like joy, for example. And
how do you know it's wholesome? Is it because it's joy?
I agree. I mean, but
so joy in itself, it's not necessarily wholesome. Pain in itself, it's not necessarily unwholesome. That's my entire point. But if you use the feeling of it as the reference, you're not seeing the middle way.
Right. But
It feels right. It feels good.
But isn't it the case that sometimes when mind sees enough, then it kind of intuitively feels what's constraining and what's not, the mind. It's like, it feels like growing. And does it never make sense to follow that as a positive reference, so to say, you know?
How would you follow it?
Well, okay, maybe that's true. Maybe in my case, sometimes I just notice the defilement of not allowing this quality to grow by itself. You know, like there's this very persistent and invisible layer of like being on guard, which causes maybe, and then it feels like I'm actually, I can allow this, which feels like I'm actively going for it.
Right,
but maybe
right.
it's not the case. Maybe it's actually this, and this is very subtle, and that's why it's hard for me, right?
Well, it will stay subtle, and that's obviously why the practice becomes refined. But yeah, that is the point. You're always on guard, and then you recognize, but hold on, that's why I gave that ambiguous example where it's not factually nor morally wrong, yet you would feel guilty because of it's just easier if it's always like this. And this comes down to saying, okay, so there is this joy because the mind is maybe elated because of this. Okay, let me see where it wants to go. As I was giving the example this morning, like taming the animal, whether it's the elephant or the dog or the cows in the other suttas, you constrain them when they go where they shouldn't. But see, when that develops in this sense of pressuring duty, it becomes like divorced from that recognition, and then it's just, I restrain them whenever they move. And that's not going to teach them a lesson, that's going to confuse them even more. The example I was giving, it's like you hit the cow when it goes to graze where it shouldn't, then the cow lay down, it's about to move, and you hit it. But you don't even know why it wanted to move. Did it want to go into the other people's property, or you just wanted to stretch and turn around and come back? And you're not going to find out because you're just beating it now. So it's not going to be a clear cut. You're going to be doing it to some extent, but it's to recognize, okay, hold on. I am not breaking the precepts. I am not giving into the mental unwholesomeness. The mind wants to move. Allow it to move. See where it goes. If it immediately runs for the gate, the dog, okay, you get it back. If it doesn't, if it's just roaming around slowly, let it be. And that sense of duty, but I must, okay, now that's the problem. Because it's not doing anything wrong. Why am I correcting it? And that's how you get to communicate. That's how it gets to learn. Look, he lets me roam around. Only when I step across, I get pain. And then it will bake itself into its own recognition, and then the mind will obey you, because you showed it what to do and what not to do.
This is probably one of more subtle aversions, like kinds of aversion. Sometimes I feel aversion. I don't know actually to what sense it's geared towards, and then I realize actually it's not geared towards any of the senses, but it's geared towards what might appear.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like mental.
It might go into the property that doesn't belong to me, so I better deal with it now. And that's exactly what I was saying. You need to let those things arise. That possibility needs to arise, and you need to endure it. It might go, it gets up. It might go, it moves. It might go, oh, it's so unpleasant, because if it goes, that's the practice. You hit it not because, it might go. You hit it when it goes. If it doesn't, you leave it, and then you bear your own irrationality until it calms down.
The other side of the coin is, if I let go of this anxiety, then I feel how freedom may taste, because actually I don't have to do anything at that point. And I don't know whether...
Yeah, well, see, no, yeah, because you can then say, well, what if I stop worrying about other people's fields? There will be nothing, then I'll be at peace. But you should stop worrying about other people's fields only when you're fully enlightened and there is no more.
But like to small extent, I mean, like
again, to small extent, you shouldn't stop worrying about possibility,
right.
But you should stop beating the animal if it's not going there because of that possibility that it might. And that's the middle ground, I see, because I say, okay, no, let the animal, people would mean, okay, so I can drop the worry. No, I didn't say that. You need to worry on the right level, but not choke the animal as a result of it.
But in the sense just that there is expansion of the mind. So there is more freedom. Right.
There will be, yeah. I mean, that's even how the simile goes. The cows roam in other people's crop. If he doesn't do it, he'll get punished, he'll get beaten, he'll get put in jail, he'll pay the price, the fine. So he's really worried and constantly keeps them back and hits them and ropes them and everything. But then he recognizes they are wandering less and less, and then they stop wandering. And then they are just staying here, and then he goes to sleep. Wakes up, cows are still there, haven't left. No problem. Because he did the work through rightly directed worry. And that's, again, that won't be visible if somebody still has a view that, well, I must deal with this, I must get rid of this worry, I must get rid of this. Not necessarily.
Maybe I can just one more in this topic that I asked before. What would be the difference between doubt hindrance and doubt fetter?
Wise doubt. Sorry to interrupt, but I was thinking wise doubt. Sometimes there is like a wise doubt, right?
Why is
Like
doubt?
Wise.
A wise
That's
doubt.
my idea. Well, there wouldn't be a doubt. It wouldn't be a doubt in this sense. It wouldn't be constraining you one way or the other. It wouldn't be pressuring you. It would be like wisely reflecting and questioning. But so what do you think? What would you think if I asked you what would be the difference? Just whatever comes to
I
mind.
haven't thought about it much, but
Between a doubt, say it's the same doubt. But one fetters you, one person's fettered by their doubt, another one is just hindered but not fettered. I guess that then brings the question, what's the difference between hindrances and fetters?
Yeah.
That's pretty much it.
so
Which one do you think it's more fundamental? Fetters?
Fetter is more fundamental.
Exactly not.
No,
It's hindrances.
it's hindrance
Yeah.
more fundamental.
Hindrances, fetters are the result of untamed hindrances. That's why they would start falling off the closer to arahantship you get. And that's why the arahant is the destroyer of the hindrances. So it's this individual giving ins to sensuality, ill will, restlessness, worry, anxiety, doubt. That's what feeds the fetters. That's what provides fuel for them, and thus they fetter you in return. So really, the difference between fetters and like say the first three fetters that fall off in a sotapanna, it's because he has already been training rightly in regard to the 5 hindrances. He's not blindly, irrationally trying to get rid of them. He's not psychologizing them. He's not managing them. He allowed them to arise on the right level and learn how to see through them through not acting out of them. That's that sutta that I often quote, because when people think, oh, so just bear it. It's like, no, the sutta is quite clear. You have perceptions of sensuality present themselves. That's not a hindrance. Wrongly attending to it, taking it up, that's now a hindrance. That's why it's a hindrance. And then the Buddha in the same sutta describes how you free it. Not, oh, then he thinks about this and does that, and he becomes from the right, he moves to the left. No, he says he stops attending to them wrongly while the thing remains. And that's how you train in regard to the hindrance. You do that sufficiently, the extent of the fetters will diminish. In other words, say you start taking the right medicine, not perfectly, but more and more accurately, and some of the coarse symptoms of your illness just disappear. They're cured. They fall off.
So, like in that case, when there is still hindrance of doubt in sotapanna, but there is no feather of doubt.
Yeah.
But for example, the next two feathers are the fourth feather is Chandaraga. So this would be for Anagami. You get rid of that, and but there still would be the hindrance of sensual desire.
For whom?
For Anagami.
For no.
No,
Hindrance, Chandaraga, it's a sensuality, that's gone.
because that's the feather.
Oh, sorry, you meant the hindrance of sensuality. Yeah, I suppose.
Hindrance.
The hindrance of sensuality, it would be there, but it won't be the central hindrance. It would, for him, it would be exemplified through that craving for being and craving for non-being, what the suttas describe. See, it's the extent of the hindrance that determines the size of the fetter. So the size of sexual desire and anger and ill will, it's gone in an anagami. But that which used to be wrongly attended, that was resulting in sensuality and anger, is now the craving for non-being, craving for being. And that still hinders him to the extent that he wrongly attends to it. And then if he stops doing that, then all the 10 hindrances are gone. Sorry, the 10 fetters and all the 5 hindrances are destroyed. Yeah.
So, according to that, it would, for Sotapanna, with this hindrance of doubt and the fetter of doubt, then he would, like, there would be certain things for Puthujjana for which Sotapanna wouldn't have any more doubt. Or is it not the case?
Well, if you're comparing them, as I said before, when you asked about difference between the pressures, it would be maybe correct in theory if you put them side by side, but from your point of view, you can never see it that way.
Okay.
So if you're not a Sotapanna, whatever you're doubtful is your fetter as well. Because you're not trained your mind in regard to the phenomenon of doubt.
Mm.
The more you train your mind in regard to the phenomenon of doubt, you'll be less and less doubtful.
Mm.
And when you're Sotapanna, then whatever's doubtful there, it won't be fettering you, it will be hindering you. But the practice of dealing with it was always the same, because what you're dealing with is not the fetters.
Mm.
You're dealing with hindrances, whether you're Puthujjana or an Arahant. Well, Arahant wouldn't, leading up to an Arahant. So fetters are the extent of the symptoms. So they offer you a measure of where you are at, while the practice of rightly attending, not giving in, enduring on the right level remains unchanged. So that's what I mean, in a way it doesn't matter to figure out the difference, because the work is the same, and to actually figure out the difference, you just need to do that same work. But it can be helpful, obviously, to people with certain, maybe, affinities and characteristics and ways of thinking. That's why the Buddha did talk about that. Mind you, he talked about fetters because they were constantly asking him about rebirth and stuff. Oh, this. He says, well, let me give you a general guideline. So if it's like these 3 symptoms are gone, it's about like this. If these 5 symptoms, it's more like this. He wasn't necessarily to like, oh, well, 1 fetter, 2, 3, oh, I felt the 3rd one fall off and stuff like that. It's training in regard to the 5 ways your mind will try to get you. Every worry, every suffering that you have will boil down to one of the hindrances. It has to. There is nothing in between. It's either going to be based on desire, ill will, restlessness, anxiety, or doubt. Or that laziness and distraction. Those are the 5 ways he tries to like get you to act, trick you, trap you.
So are there any reasons to pick either these as a guidelines or 3 defilements?
Do both, different times. Whatever inspires you to do the right effort on the right level.
Specifically about sloth and torpor and this kind of one of these hindrances. How, because when it comes to restlessness, it's kind of more intuitive how to endure that. To not, for example, start doing things left and right.
Yeah.
And when it comes to sloth and torpor, it is more like, no, now I'm going to stand up and do things to not be.
Right.
But
well,
it sounds aversion for sloth and torpor.
Yeah, so if, again, it depends on it's not always going to be the same sloth and torpor. Like if it's just drowsy and it's just constantly, you're drifting away, then get up, wake yourself up in that sense. But it's more like when that pressure to like lay down, sleep, or not want to, I don't want to think about my intentions now. That's the important one to recognize. If like, oh, I'm sleepy, well, go to sleep. Maybe you are tired. And then you wake up and don't want to get up, but want to continue laying down, well, now you know it's laziness. And get up. If you don't want to think about things that are unpleasant related to practice, well, you recognize, well, okay. That's clearly because I don't want to deal with it. I'm lazy on that level where it matters. Doesn't mean I shouldn't be lazy and go and start doing random projects. But when it comes to not tolerating these unwholesome states, they try to pressure you to accept them, act out of them, you're never lazy there. There is never a rest there. On that mental level where your intentions, where your choices are, where the gate is, where you open and close the entrance to the city. You can't afford. But as I said, initially it might feel like I have to watch this all the time, but as we described, actually it's not. Like, you have an intention and you know that it's there, and you don't need to police it. You don't need to chase the thoughts that come out of it or go in. You just need to not lose the sight that when that time to choose comes. That's the important one. And that's actually quite effortless. Like, there's that similar, I don't remember where I read it. I think it was in the suttas, but I might have come up with it, I don't really know. It was the swing. The children on a swing. So you have your child on a swing, and you could run with the swing constantly, trying to look at the child, or you could step back from which you see both ends of the swing and make sure that it stays within the normal range. Or like you have to look after 20 children or something, you could individually chase one by one and you won't last long. Or you could, go up, climb up, and then from which you see them all, and then you bring them back. So this is the same when it comes to intentions. Initially it feels like I have to police every millisecond of my life, but that's not what intentions are. Intentions are at the back of your mind, and you're already deciding, you're already choosing, and you're ignoring that because you're looking at the wrong place.
The gateway is enough.
It's the only thing you need, really.
Sure.
I have a question about this gray line, maybe between the maintaining the suffering and the potentially kind of like wise, Bhutanga maybe practices to make some things more apparent. So as an example, if let's say I wake up and I know I have like 8 hours in front of computer talking to a lot of people, and I feel some very kind of subtle but pervasive feeling, right? And what I could do is, if I start working, I won't be able, because I have to still manage the conversation, I won't be able to in a wholesome way kind of deal with it. But I could do yoga, which makes it more prominent, the feeling, and it's unpleasant, right? So I'm doing it. You could say that I'm doing it to get rid of it, but also you could say I'm doing it to be able to deal with it kind of face to face, and also in a situation where I actually can deal with it, right? So I'm wondering, like, where's the line?
It depends on your intention.
Right.
You just answered it. If you're doing it to get rid of it, well, you're acting wrongly. But if you're doing it to highlight it, that's fine. Because you will be doing the work of enduring it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this is unpleasant because there's doubt, of course.
Yeah.
Then, right, yeah. So, because we had with Carol conversation when we were coming here, so on that kind of perspective, couldn't it be said that also like good old nostril breathing or
I knew you were going to go there.
Pani Bhavana? I'm not doing it, but I mean.
No, I knew the question will go there. No,
but
exactly.
Like, there are situations where, with the right intention, you could use it to. For example, I don't have a lot of time, and we are living busy lives, unfortunately, moreover. And then I can go to this is one of the most extreme and kind of clear examples of restraint, because I give it very specific focus, right? And then it's clear, and then there's more effort to be done, but it's more, so to say, pronounced, so it's more effective in a way, right?
Yeah, well, first, it's not restraint, though.
Well,
restraint is about not doing what's there wanting to be done.
Sorry, let me explain. So the idea is, if I sit down, close my eyes, I move this thing because I know that then it's going to be most obvious that it wants to go somewhere else, right? Assuming it's the case, because it's like.
Yeah, okay, but then why are you not letting it go somewhere else? As I said, why is the movement bad per se?
I mean, I would agree with you. So I was kind of playing.
See, that's why generically I always criticize these meditations, because generically they are always rooted in the same.
Right.
Having said that, I said in many talks, yes, of course, if it's too much, I just overwhelmed, I'm tired, I have to manage so many things. Sit down and calm down. Relax. Do the yoga, do whatever to calm down. But don't confuse that for the practice, because it's not.
But sometimes you describe it as just sitting down and not doing anything else, and focusing on not doing anything else.
If
rather
that's
than,
what you
right?
want to do, that's also fine. If you want to watch your belly moving because that's what calms you down, that's also fine.
But actually, I think there is something else in between. So you sometimes mention like just sitting, not also indulging in a meditation technique,
Okay.
right? But only saying to myself, oh, I won't do anything else. So negatively describing that,
Yeah.
and that would be, would you agree, proper practice?
Well, there will be less wrong practice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it can
Right.
still be rooted in wrong things, but you're not going to do it perfectly for the right reasons all the time
Right.
from the start.
Right.
But yes, see, that practice prevents you from, because see, when you say, are you focusing, you help restrain, you don't. Restraint is where intentions are.
Mm-hmm.
Focusing shuts down
Right.
the intentions. Like, say, there is a cow that wants to go, I'm not letting it. Let me focus on this where I stop seeing the cow
Mm-hmm.
and I get peaceful. That's not restraint. Now, as I said, if sometimes you do that because you just can't handle cows or dogs anymore, you had enough. Of course, you're going to do it. But if you now think that that's the practice, you are just even worse than before you started meditating.
Mm-hmm.
Although you might feel more peaceful because you're ignoring the problem of a wild animal. That's why inevitably all such meditations share the common view of thoughts and thinking is bad and I must stop it and focus away and concentrate away from it. But that was never a problem. And same, you inadvertently described how, no, when he wants to move, I restrain it. But why? Because by doing that, you start to imply that movement's bad. He mustn't move. Move, no, stop, get back. Why? Did it go somewhere where it shouldn't? Well, I don't know, because I didn't even let it tell me.
Right, because the practice you described, which is just sitting down, it's not about restraining the body, but restraining the impulses to move, to do something else.
To see them come up.
Right. To do
Let them come up,
Mhm.
and then recognize your responsibility in accepting them, delighting what the suttas say, and acting out of them. But not prevent them from coming up because they're uncomfortable when they're present.
But isn't like this neutral object, right? So isn't it the way also to see it coming? So because sometimes I'm so, one can be so, again, immersed in thinking that it's hard to even notice that it's happening, right? Like to what extent it's
Which
happening.
one? What? See what coming?
Some
The unwholesome impulses or something.
unwholesome impulses.
Yeah. So, well, let me give you an experiment example and see which one really helps. Say you never heard about sense restraint, and nobody ever told you the value of not acting out on the impulses, and all you heard was about relaxing through the breathing. Would it even occur to you on account of that practice to say no to these impulses and to start seeing danger in them and not give in to them and regard them as dhat and pain and boil like the suttas describe? It wouldn't. It would not, in a million years of meditation techniques, because it doesn't lead to that.
Mm-hmm.
Consequently, for the sake of the experiment, you never heard about meditation techniques. Never did any.
Mm.
But you were told, sensual impulses are bad. Try and contain them in your mind. Remind yourself of it. Don't forget about them. How would you remind yourself now? How would you help your reminding of it when you never heard a meditation technique that doesn't really relate to it? You would do it by remembering what you already learned, by learning more, by discerning more danger in them. That's why the Buddha said one is not free from sensuality, not because they haven't practiced meditation hard enough. It's because they haven't understood the danger of giving in hard enough. They haven't discerned the poison. They still think sometimes it's not poisonous. And no amount of concentrating will make you catch the poison if you don't fully understand it. And that's not on the level of concentration. In other words, what you're concentrating has nothing to do with it. And that whole idea of concentration helps you catch the moments. Moments are the result of your restraint or non-restraint. It's not where choice to restrain or non-restraint comes from.
I fully agree with that, but sometimes I'm talking about these activities which are going on, let's say it feels like, months at a time, all the time, and it's so hard to notice it. So for example, sometimes some mental
Such as?
attitudes, like being in so it correlates, for example, with being with some part of the body and not the other part of the body,
But
kind
why-
of like emotional.
But why is there a problem? Why
Because
is that something you need to notice?
because I noticed that when it's gone, then it feels like the mind is more open. It's like there is some kind of attachment, but it's so subtle that I cannot.
So in other words, you're saying when the discomfort's gone, it feels nice.
Mm.
And you're back where you started.
So it's not the right level, in a way.
Well,
right?
exactly. I'm saying you're still, and you would be. If you think that through concentration you'll be catching these differences, means you're still guided by how you feel. As in, uncomfortable, I need to address this. It's at the back of my mind for 3 months. Well, is it a problem just because it's uncomfortable? Does that make it a problem? Not necessarily, as we just described earlier on. It might be, but then it's not because of the reasons because it's uncomfortable.
Until I see this tension as presented as my current choice, which usually comes with practice.
Well, no, your
right?
current choice, the most current
Right.
choice there and then, it's, are you choosing to habitually, blindly want to get rid of the discomfort? Are you implying habitually, blindly, that presence of discomfort is bad? And you realize that's not a justified position. Because why is it bad? Because it's unpleasant. That's not that should not be the baseline. That should not be a reference point. Yet it is. That's the nature of craving. See, craving for more pleasure in pleasurable feeling, craving for less pain in unpleasant feeling. It's the fundamental attitude. Uproot that attitude, you are free from suffering. You're an arhat, completely. That's why I say often, it doesn't matter why this happened, why did I do this? Because there and then, all of those movements would be rooted in, it's unpleasant and I don't want it and I'm doing anything I can to get rid of it. So it will be the same. Concentration helps me catch where suffering isn't. Because suffering is not in those things that you catch and those subtle perceptions. Suffering is in your persisting attitude of leaning away from it, wanting it to go away. And no amount of concentration will show you that, because any effort of concentration is rooted in that attitude. It's done for that very reason. It's scary for people to accept it. That's why they often irrationally try to refute it, but they can't. So it's always like, yeah, but I find it helpful. Yeah, I don't know, but it helped me a lot with this or helped me a lot with that. And the reason why it's scary is because it seemingly leaves you like without any attempt at escape. It fully reveals the confinement of your own mind. See, if you give up little attempts at just management and lessening of this, you're just left fully confined. There is no outside of this, which is now at the moment painful. And that's, by the way, how you free yourself from Attavada as well. It's not incidental that understanding these things would drop off the three fetters. The whole premise, the whole phenomenon behind Attavada is implying the self, independent, I, external to this experience as a whole. In other words, magically believing in a way out, because if there is no way out, even mundane things will be unbearable. But see, they're unbearable not because there is no way out. They're unbearable because you crave against not having the way out. If you stop craving, then the confinement, as the sutras say, becomes the opening. That which was confining you is actually what the freedom is. The impermanence is actually what frees you from burden. The fact that you can't own things even if you want to. But for that, you need to confine yourself first. And there's actually a sutta that I think it was like a monk. It wasn't the Buddha. And he was talking to a king's charioteer. And the king's charioteer said, "Oh, I heard that your teacher, he teaches about, freedom like from confinement, openings amidst the confinement." And then he asked him like, "Yes, but what do you understand by confinement?" I'm paraphrasing. And he said, well, let me give you an example. He's a charioteer, and sometimes the king orders him to take his wives riding on horses. So he would sit on a horse with one wife in front and one in the back. And they're all dressed up and perfumed. And he knows that even if he just accidentally touches them, he'll chop his head off, the king. So he's fully confined with this, and any direction of movement is going to be the end of him. But that's his job, basically. And then he says, yeah, that would be one confinement, and obviously corresponds as an example. But the confinement that the Buddha teaches freedom from, it's even greater than that. And that's the whole freedom from Attavada, that it's going to feel very confined, claustrophobic, closed. Because there is no outside movement, they wouldn't fall within the movement. There is no outside action or choice, they wouldn't fall within the internal intention of action. So there is no outside of it. Now you can say to yourself, okay, there's no outside of it, and still imply the outside. You truly train yourself within that confinement by not giving into this management that I talk about, or trying to get rid of it and look for the problem where it isn't. That will confine you, that will feel uncomfortable to the extent that you resist it. And that's usually why people feels like too much to ask. If you tell them your meditation is, as I said, 99.99% is going to be rooted in wrong reasons and be taking you away from the direction where you should be going. As I said, yes, there can always be an exception to a rule where somebody does genuinely because physically they're exhausted or this and they just want to wind down, not do anything else, and they don't do it for that reason. But more often than not, that will be the reason. And we come back to what we said. So why is the confinement bad? Why is that so scary? I mean, you're just confined within yourself. Why is that the worst possible thing? Why do you need others, external distractions, actions, desires? It's like, oh, actually, yeah, it's a good question that I don't know the answer to. And the answer is not some great philosophical mystery. It's because you habitually don't know how to not lean towards pleasure, habitually lean immediately away from pain. And if it's neither pleasure nor pain, you don't know how to just go into oblivion. Because enduring those things on those emotional levels, it's the most uncomfortable. Is that particular layer. It's not too much when it's just coarsely overwhelming you that you can get used to actually. And it's not too little where it's just invisible. It's just there at the back of your mind all the time, day in, day out, seemingly preventing you to find happiness in the world because it's just always there. It's like, well, exactly. Because the possibility of cessation, impermanence, it's always there. So what you are having there inadvertently is how things actually are, and it's not going to feel pleasant.
I guess it's not even just the skill of how to be exactly in the middle.
No.
But not even having the view that these are just pleasant and unpleasant things, because I have a view which is so incomparable. It's like different universe, right?
Yeah, the view is the leading
constraint.
Yeah, the view basically takes you in the either right direction or bad direction, depending on it. That's why it's important to clarify it. But you can spend lifetime just clarifying things if you don't actually start doing it on that level that matters and doing it on the right level. Where I keep saying, it's not gonna develop. And sometimes it just feels too much. Is it though? Is life the way it is it not too much? With all the implications and stress and burden, ever increasing burden. It's not a static thing. Ever increasing. Is that okay? Well, even the people that would say yes, it is. It's only because at the moment they are able to run with that wild dog. Deep down, they know that it won't last forever. They will have to stop. And when they do, then that dog will probably tear them apart because it became so wild by that point and they became so weak that there will be nothing they can do about it. That's the whole simile of aging is coming, sickness is coming, death is coming, unavoidable. So either way, whether you choose to ignore this and just fully enjoy the life like there is no tomorrow, heading the same way. So you might as well try at least do something about it.
And how could the people in the sutta develop in the right direction even before talking with the Buddha? Like, because this one point that comes up.
Well, think about like this. Like today, take an average person. Generally, even the underprivileged or whatever else wouldn't be worrying about their immediate life or existence or food, whether there will be tomorrow and stuff. It comes and goes, but it's nowhere. But back then, that was the reality.
Yeah.
So they could not become as complacent as we are today. And that's exactly how the mind became developed. These things were at the back of their mind, whether they wanted them or not. Not everybody. It's not a guarantee that you're going to develop, but if it's there, with rightly attending to it, recognizing it, then the wisdom can take place. And that's exactly what some people just needed to hear about the Buddha and what he taught to somebody else, and it was enough for them to understand, because they already had everything there to be seen. They just needed the actual aha.
Yeah, exactly. This was something I was wondering recently, that more than the difference in sensuality, because it's easy to imagine that the problem in modern age is sensuality, because we have much more entertainment, much more exciting food, and much more stimulation. But maybe it's not so much the problem in sensuality, because even back then they had music, singing, and sex and whatever. Yeah. It's more the how much we take for granted physical safety, how much we take for granted
comfort,
dying in a late age. But we all imagine that we're going to live at least until 60s, 70s.
Yeah.
But it's just gratuitous.
Yeah, very much so. Exactly. Yeah, people got softer, basically.
Isn't it also about the, not just lack of the teaching, but also anti-teaching of alternative religions, of marketing? So seeing, not just being kind of, having those pleasures, but also having the sense of identity still cultivated by actual lot of effort, from the outside world to have this, self of worth identified with being that or being this.
Yeah, but all that's done because people want safety. People assume safety in it. When you're somebody, it offers you some sense of comfort. When you get respect, it offers you a sense of comfort, pleasure. It does boil down to the very basic cravings. It never leaves that level. It can be more then condensed in it, but it's always going to be that same universally motivating factor. That's why the teaching, the freedom from it that the Buddha understood and that he taught, he said it's a universal principle. Doesn't matter the gender, age, culture. Every mind works along these principles of craving against pain, craving towards pleasure, and craving towards ignorance when it's neither pleasure nor pain, oblivion, distraction.
If the intention is to save the pain of the dying animal, then it's right.
You're killing it.
Yeah, but it's dying anyway.
Yeah, but killing it hurts as well. So, what pain are you saving? Your pain of watching the pain of an animal. It's gonna die anyway. So why are you rushing it?
So I think it's not right.
It's not right. Killing it's never right. Because you are not privy to its perspective. And although it seems like, it's painful and so on, what makes you think that death is not worse pain than that? So you would be acting out of your own desire by doing it.
The culture is becoming like that. That
Oh yeah.
What kind of a dog owner are you?
Yeah, of
to
course.
let the dog
it's
die
a torture,
natural death
of course.
instead of going to sleep. Even and it's called in Polish the same, usypiamy psa. So the dog is not really even dying. You're not killing the dog. You're putting the dog to sleep. just to excuse.
Yeah, body rightly.
Like
yeah. Well, same like what's done with devotion as well.
Mm-hmm.
You rebrand it.
Yeah.
Don't call it for what it is.
Yeah.
And then it becomes perfectly acceptable in a few
Yeah.
generations' time. It becomes a norm.
Right.
People say, well, it's not alive. Like what I just
Yeah.
killed. It's that's exactly the collective avoidance of responsibility.
It's a good phrase.
That's how it works.
Because we have implicitly the idea that with death we put an end,
An end.
to its suffering.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we don't kind of even you don't put a doubt on this idea.
Yeah, but hold on. Do I know it's the end?
Exactly.
Do I know it's not even worse? He won't be able to tell you, by the way.
Mm.
But yeah. So you realize you have no reference. You're claiming, like, you're believing, but you have no reference for where that animal is. Or a person. So you're doing it for yourself, one way or the other. It has to be coming out of your desire. Even if it's like a noble desire, it's still going to be your desire from your limited perspective. And in this case, it's ending on someone else's life on account of your limited perspective. So it's like, probably better to avoid it.
What is your Ajahn, what is your recommendation for practice for lay people? 5 precepts.
Depends how far you want to go in terms of the practice.
Daily practice, like
No, how far you want to go in terms of the results. What do you want to achieve? Well, it depends how much you have to start giving up. If you don't want to keep more than 5 precepts, then you have to lower your expectations and work a lot harder in other areas. So it won't be the most efficient practice.
Yeah, that's.
So then you ask yourself,
Yeah.
so hold on, I'm already in an unsuitable environment, household life, bombarded with stuff, many duties, and I'm taking a non-efficient approach.
Exactly that.
So what is the likelihood of success? You don't know, but you can guess that it's probably lower.
But
So then you have to be, well, you have to recognize that and not kind of believe that, no, I'm still practicing for the final liberation
no, not at all.
while refusing to upgrade.
Lower expectation.
Yeah, well, how
As
far
a
you
kid.
go is how far you apply yourself. But yeah, theoretically, you can get some sense of freedom and some insights if you're really clear and do things on the high level. Not just blindly adhere to prescribed methods and instructions.
That's kind of the question.
That's the practice. As I said, you can't know how far you go before you reach there. If you take more than 5 precepts, you have a better chance of succeeding, even with lesser amount of effort. So factor in the time factor, how much time you have left, the health factor, the circumstances factor, and then see whether you can afford a slow, half-compromised, non-efficient approach or not.